is my E92 BMW M3, which I bought from a salvage auction in an absolute state. Written off, no MOT, and no paperwork. And there's been one thing playing my mind every night with this car.
Original rod bearings. Rod bearings. Rod bearings. Rod bearings. Rod bearings. Rod bearings. Rod bearings.
The rod bearings.
The rod bearings, one of the most common faults on this car. One of the worst things that could happen to any car out there, resulting in a complete engine failure. And on 208,000 miles with no proof of these ever being done, it's a ticking time bomb. It leaves me wondering how close these bearings are to failing and resulting in a catastrophic engine failure. So yeah, today, to put my mind at ease, we're going to be doing the rod bearings, throttle actuators, and finding out a few other issues along the way. Right then, so I've pulled the car in now, I've jacked the car up and it's fairly level. So what I'm going to do is let the car warm up for about half an hour. Then when it's warmed up, we're going to start off by dropping the oil out, and then we can move on to doing everything else. So I'll see you in about half an hour, well, a second to you. And just like that. So there's two sump plugs on this car, there's one here and another one here. So we'll start at the back and then we'll do the front. Can't see any metal filings, so it's good news, isn't it? Well, not yet at least, but we'll see about that anyway. So, as well as doing the rod bearings and the throttle actuators, I'm also going to give this car a full service along with the gearbox. So that's oil, oil filter, spark plugs, air filter, oil for the gearbox, and the two filters. Right, so now to remove this oil filter, we need to remove this weird little casing around the edge of it for some reason. I've not seen one of these before, not sure why, but take this off, unplug that sensor while we're at it. It's in the way, pull that off, and then do the oil filter. So I thought it'd be best off to start off by swapping out the old oil filter for the new one and getting that out of the way. As well as that, we can inspect the old oil filter, which will give us a rough indication on the overall health of the engine. So when we've done everything, we can put it all straight back together. Strangely, one of the washers I've been supplied, I think they've given me one of the wrong size, so I'm just going to reuse the main one for the sump and it should be okay. So now I'm going to change both the O-rings and we're just going to put the new filter straight in so it's done. So now that we removed the old oil filter, we need to install the new rubber O-ring so that when we tighten this back down, it's not going to leak. I always find the best way to do this is to just use a small pick to ease it off, and then to just put a small bit of oil on the new ones and work them on with fingers. Now that's done, we just need to put the sump plug back in and then we can start moving everything else from up top. So another thing you probably noticed is you see where the sump sits close to the subframe, you can't actually fit your finger through there, which usually means the engine mounts are shot, and people usually tend to do the engine mounts when they do the rod bearings, which makes me believe they haven't ever been done either. But we'll worry about this in a bit, we need to go back up top first. Right, so now I'm going to remove the airbox. I think it's two bolts here, undo this, undo that, and then we can pull it out. We'll find out. So we'll get around to fit the new air filter later. We're just going to take it off for now so that we can remove the plenum. And just take a look at how much sand is coming out of this thing. I think it's well overdue. So now I've taken the airbox off. Just under here, there are 4 Jubilee clips which we've got to undo. 4 on each side, 8 overall, and then we can take the inlet off. Right, so now we've got the easy stuff out of the way, we can really start stripping this engine down to get ready to take those rod bearings out and have a look at how bad they are. Anyway, to get these off, I used a 6mm socket and it was a lot easier than using a screwdriver. Right, so now the clips are undone, we need to take the scuttle tray off, rear strut brace off, and it should pull straight up. So we need to get the scuttle tray off so we can remove the coil packs and the spark plugs at the back. So it's held down by a few 8mm bolts. Once it's all done, we can pull it straight off. Then to remove the strut brace, it's a few 30mm bolts and a 10mm. Right, now that inlet's off, we're going to pull these covers off, remove the coil packs and take the spark plugs out, and we're going to leave them out so that when we're doing the bottom end and we need to turn the engine by hand, it's going to make it a bit easier. Right, so now I've got those covers off, we're going to gently try and prise out the coil packs and then remove the spark plugs. To get the spark plugs out, I had to use a variety of different attachments because the ones at the back are really tricky to get to. So to be fair, they don't actually look too bad. It wouldn't surprise me if they've not long been done. So I'm going to put these back into each coil pack where it's come out, and then we'll move on to the other side. Up here then we're nearly done. We just need to put an engine brace across it and hold it through this hook here so that when we take the subframe off to get to the rod bearings, the engine's not going to drop down. Right, so that's on now. We've got a little bit of tension in it. It's nice and tight, not too tight. So what I'm going to do now is going to get the wheels off, and then we can start removing the subframe. Right, so the first thing we need to get off is this under tray here, which is held on by a few 60mm bolts. We'll get that off, and then we'll move on to stuff like removing the arms and the other bits along the way. Right, so now to remove that under tray, we need to remove a couple of plastic covers at the back so we can get to the bolts at the back of the subframe. These are held down by a few 8mm bolts and a few clips. Now they're out of the way, let's start removing bits off the subframe. Right, so I need to get his arms off and the steering rack, and what I'm thinking I'm going to do is unbolt them here where there's an 18mm bolt, that one there and that one there, and then the steering tie rod itself, I'm going to try and get the ball joint off on the hub, try and knock it off, and the anti-roll bar, I'm just going to undo it there, and then I should be able to just take the subframe off and push those arms to one side. And I also need to undo these two electrical connections here. This is for the steering and it goes across the whole subframe. That one there is for the headlight leveling, so let's get it off. So I'm going to start off with the track rod and then we'll move on to the rest. Now I've got that track rod off, we're going to get the electrical connections off and then move on to getting the other arms off. Okay, this side's done now, so I'm just going to let everything hang off the shock here, literally tuck everything out of the way, and when it comes to undoing the bolts for subframe, we can literally just drop it straight down. Okay, so that's one side down, but now what we also need to do is undo the bolt for the steering column. Just through here on the driver's side, you see that little bolt through there is one we need to undo to take the steering rack off. So I think it's like an E10 or an E8. We'll undo that and we should be able to pull the steering rack off. So it's actually an E8 and you can get in there fairly easily with a long extension. Now that's out of the way, we just need to undo the lower arms, same as the other. Right, that's done now, so we need to undo the banjo bolts on the power steering rack, drain the fluid out and undo the lines and the attachments which hold it to this subframe. This is much more awkward than I'd imagined. Honestly, this was such a messy way of doing it. To be fair, I kind of wish I'd done it a different way, but I wanted to get all of that fluid out. Right, now we've undone that, we just need to unbolt these here, all of these little 10mm bolts that hold all of the lines to the subframe. Oh yeah, and I almost forgot, and the F-strap on the engine. Right, that's all done now, that subframe's ready to drop down. Let's undo the bolts and get it off. Right, so there's about 6 bolts holding the subframe to the car. We just need to undo them all, give it a wiggle, and easily enough, it comes down. Right then, so to get this sump off, there's a load of T30s around the edge. I think a few through these little holes on the sump here. I need to take that heat shield off for the gearbox as well to get to a few bolts at the back of it. And also up here we need to take that off as well. And look at how bad these engine mounts are. What I might do now actually is get these off first and I'll compare them to new ones. So let's get them off. Right, so just quickly look at the difference in height from the old engine mounts compared to the new ones. These are proper squashed down and they definitely need to be replaced. So let's get back to that sump. Right, so to be fair, I probably didn't undo this tensioner the best way at the time. Probably best to undo the belt first and then take it off to make it easier later. Anyway, it's held down by a few T30s and then we also need to undo another bracket on the side of the sump. After that we need to remove the under tray for the gearbox and the electrical connections at the back for the lambdas as well as the crank sensor. We need to get these out of the way so we can get to some of the E10 bolts we need to undo to remove the sump. So to get the bracket off, it's a few T30s and the bolts themselves, they just need a bit of leverage and you can break them off fairly easily. They're a bit tight to get in there with a ratchet, so it's easy to do it with a spanner and then try and use a ratchet spanner. Now they're out of the way, we can start to undo the T30s on the bottom of the sump. You won't be able to undo these with a normal socket, so you've got to use something a bit thinner. Although the ones on the outside are fine, they're quite easy to get off. Okay, so sump's off now. Last thing left to do before we can do the rod bearings is take the oil picket feed off and then we'll get started. Right, so I've just given this a quick wipe down and one thing I've noticed is look in the oil pickup there. There's some little metal shards in there. Not quite sure what that's of. It could be part of the rod bearing or something else. We're definitely going to give this a clean up though. If you see that, little bits of metal fragment. I'm not sure what that is. Anyway, let's get this feed off. A few bolts here and a couple more here, and then we can get started. Now, as you probably know, finding anything like that inside of an engine is never good, and trying to figure out what it's of is even more confusing. I started to wonder if it was one of the bearings, and of course we haven't undone any of them yet, so we don't know what condition they're in. And if it wasn't one of the bearings, what could it be off? Right, so I've got both the oil pickup feeds off now, that pipe off as well, and the little bracket on the back. So I've turned the engine over by hand, and I've turned it with, I think it's 32mm, and basically brought these two down so I can work on them. So that's cylinder 5 and cylinder 1. So let's start here and we'll work our way back. How bad are these 200,000 mile rod bearings going to be? Because I don't think they've ever been changed. Oh, we'll start now. And we got to tighten the new bolts 3 different times to get them to the right spec. I think these are standard bearings at least. Standard bearings maybe. Standard bolts, I'm not too sure yet until I get them off. What I'm hoping for is it's worth doing. I think they are standard bolts as well. They look like it because they look like they're torque to yield. So that bit there is like a bit that stretches each time you torque it. And like I say, when we put these new bolts in, we're going to have to tighten the new ones 3 different times. So when we do it, you'll see what I mean, and then I'll just kind of run through everything, because it will be the same across all of them. Let's get this off and see how bad they are, and then we'll do a little comparison as well. So this one here is cylinder number 5, because it's a V8 and it's how the engine's laid out. So I'm wondering how bad this is going to be. There is a bit of wear on it. There is a little bit of, quite a bit of wear actually. I don't think they've ever been changed. Right, so the first ones are off then, and I've printed this sheet off that I found online, and I'm going to use it to put all the old ones on, and we're also going to use it to check the torques when we do it 3 times, seal the boxes, and we're also going to check the clearances with a plastic gauge, which we'll get around to in a sec. But take a look at these. This top one is actually really worn. It may be a bit hard to tell, but if you see that little copper bit inside of there, I think we're catching these just in time. I think the further that we get to the back, the worse it's going to get. Right, so when I say checking the clearance, what I mean is the clearance between the new bearing shell on the inside of here and the crankshaft, which is going to be inside of here. So the clearance is how thick the film of the oil is going to be running on the inside of the new shells. Right, so this is a plastic gauge, and the whole idea in this is when we're going to put this on the inside of here, we're going to clamp it and torque it to spec, and it's going to crush a little bit of this material inside of that gap, which is going to be an oil film, and then we're going to use this gauge here to check the thickness of it, and that'll give us an idea. So this side is what we're going to be using, where it's in millimeters, and it should be somewhere between these two. And I'll show you it as well while I'm doing it, so it'll make much more sense. You're probably wondering what I'm going to replace those bearings with. So I'm going to replace them with ACL race bearings. I've used these in plenty of things before, never had an issue, and they're pretty good value for money too. So rod bolts as well, I'm going to reuse factory rod bolts in it. Some people will hate me for it, but you've got to think that ARP ones about £600-700. All 16 of these were just over £100, and you've got to think if they've lasted this long, I don't see why they wouldn't last any longer again. So let's get it all in, show you how it's going to work, and just get on with it. Right, so I've taken cylinder 1 out and cleaned both of these up, and I'm going to do them at the same time, well, pretty much. So to fit the new bearing shells to the end caps, we need to give them a quick wipe down, and then we literally just press fit them straight in. So at the end of each one there's a small tang, and you have to locate that in the right spot and make sure they're fairly flat and they just press straight in. It's that straightforward. Now we need to break a little bit of plastic gauge off and put it on each one so we can check the clearance. Now I also need to prepare the bolts, and I'm using a special ARP thread grease to fit these. It gives us a more accurate torque reading when we're tightening them down. Right, so what I need to do now is put the bearing shells into both of these. We're just going to press fit them in, put some assembly grease on the top part, and then what we could do is clamp the first one up, torque it to spec as it should, undo it, and we'll measure it with a gauge. Right, even though we remove the old con rod bearings and fit the new ones, we still need to make sure that they're okay, because if they haven't got the right clearance and we don't check it, it can cause all sorts of issues. So we want to make sure the clearance is okay before we put these bearings in there and tighten them up. Right, so they're all done now. What we need to do is crack them loose again and then check them with a gauge and see what the clearance is. Bear in mind we've got to do this 2 more times after we've checked it. Rather frustratingly, but I'm going to check each and every one with a plastic gauge because I'm boring like that. Or maybe I just don't want it to go wrong. Now we need to check this is within the right range, because if it isn't, that means we've got a problem with either the bearings or the crankshaft itself. Right, so now this card is our guide. Now this needs to be between either 0.03 and 0.75. There you go, so it's about 0.05, which is pretty good. That's about where it wants to be. And of course, further along we would go, we'd have a smaller clearance. Of course, the smaller it gets, the larger the clearance. But bear in mind, it's going to be a bit ovaled no matter what you do. And it's like, if you look at the edge of the bearing, over there's a bit of a gap there, but along the main bit of the bearing, we're pretty much bang on where it wants to be, which is good. So it's great that the first one's okay, but of course we still need to check the rest of them. Now what we need to do is remove the plastic gauge and put some assembly grease on this. The reason we're doing this is to create a film before the car builds any oil pressure up to reduce friction. You can remove the plastic gauge just by scratching it off with your nail or something like oil or WD-40, but you want to make sure you get all of it off. Just do it finger tight. We'll check the other one and then we can do it 2 more times, but I'm not going to bore you with that, of course, so I'm going to get on and do that and we'll move on to the next cylinder. Right, so they're all done now. I've loosened them off and tied them up 3 times, so now we can move on to the next one. So we're going to turn the engine, carry on with these, do them exactly the same, and same with the rest. Of course, I'm not going to bore you with all of that, so I'm going to get on with it and we'll take a look at the bearings when they're all out. But first, we'll go over this set and I'll quickly try and run you through what we're going to be doing on each one. So now we're moving on to cylinder 2 and 6, so we're going to undo the end caps, remove the old bolts and the old bearings. The best way I found to get to the top ones was a plastic tie lever off a bike just to push them out. Now they're out, we need to push the new bearings in the same as we did in the end caps. Now they're a little bit fiddly to get to, but it does help a little bit if you thread a bolt into one of the con rods, hold it as you're trying to press it in. Now then we need to make sure everything's nice and clean and then putting some more assembly grease on the top bearing shell and then pulling them back down onto the crankshaft. Now we're ready to put the end caps back on with the new bearing shells fitted, and these are actually fracture fitted rods, which means that when they're made, they're created individual to each con rod, so they've got numbers on them and they should fit perfectly together and the crack literally just disappears. Now we're ready to put the new bolts in and torque them to spec. So first of all, we've got to do 6 Newton meters, 20 Newton meters and then 130 degrees, and bear in mind we've got to do this 3 times on each one. But this is because I'm using the factory OEM torque to yield bolts, which means they're single use and you've got to do this 3 times to make sure they're not going to break loose. So this would be one upside to using the ARP or a different brand of bolts, because you'd only have to do this once. But it doesn't really bother me, to be fair. It just means I have to loosen them off a couple of times and retighten them, but of course that's all going to be down to preference. Now that we torqued this up to spec, we need to do the same as we did the other set, break them off and check them with the plastic gauge. And this one is also well within tolerance, so now I can clean it up and refit it exactly the same as the other one. And now I don't need to remove the end cap again, I can just break it free and torque it up 2 more times. Now you know what the deal is. I'm just going to repeat this exact same process across all of them. But like I say, I'm not going to make you sit for all of that, so I'm going to blitz through all of these and then we'll take a look at those bearings when I'm done. Right, now I've got them all out, take a look at how bad these are. It's a good job that I'm doing them. Now there's a lot of wear in these. As you can see, the gold is the copper starting to show, which means it's starting to wear away at the bearing, and some are even worse than others. Right, here we go then. So this is 208,000 miles of rod bearings that have never been changed. I'm pretty sure these are the factory ones. Look at how bad number 3 is. That one is close to spinning. As well as that, 7 and 8 don't exactly look great, but it is what it is at the end of the day. I think we've caught it just in time. So now we've got them out, let's finish off putting the others in and then we can get everything back together. So after looking at those, I'm relieved that we're doing this now, because a lot of those were really close to going. And I also feel quite lucky that we've caught this just in time. Now this just proves it's not just people scaremongering. I know this car's done, what, 200 odd thousand miles? And this is meant to be an LCI car where they apparently changed the design, but it's still not in great condition. So if we hadn't have done these, God knows how long it would have lasted. Okay, so that's all the rod bearings done now. They're all torqued up and they're all good to go. What I need to do now then is get a sump and all the lines back on. But before I start putting everything back together, I'm going to give this sump a quick clean out. Just try and get rid of some of the debris that's left in it. Some of the sludge and carbon that's built up over time. Same with the lines as well. We'll clear them up and make sure that everything's nice and clean, ready to put back together. So we do need to clean it down, because if you look inside of that, you can see how much stuff is blocking it. And that's going to affect all sorts of things like oil pressure, you know, how much oil and what's kind of pumping around the engine. So we're going to make sure everything's nice and clean. So I'm still not entirely sure what those metal filings are from, but for now I'm going to try not to worry about it because it could be from anything. On the plus side though, we've done the rod bearings, so we're going to get the O-rings off these and get them cleaned up. Now that we've got all of those off, we're going to clean them out with some brake cleaner and then blow them out with an airline. After doing this a few times, there were still a few metal filings stuck in the pickup, so I had to use a small pick, keep going at them and blowing out every so often. But after doing this for long enough, there's no debris left and now they look a lot better. Now they're cleaned up, I need to remove the oil sensor and clean the sump. After removing the oil sensor, I'm going to leave it to soak in some contact cleaner while I clean the sump. So I'm starting off to clean the sump down by going over it with some degreaser and then leaving it for about half an hour to dig in. Now I need to scrub it down, trying to use a variety of cleaning chemicals and brake cleaner to get the carbon off. And the results speak for themselves. There we go then, so after a lot of scrubbing and a lot of cleaning, it does look one hell of a lot better inside there. Oil pickups are all clean now, all level sensors clean, and we've got a fresh gasket to go on. So let's get to it. So now we're going to put the oil pickup feeds back on, and I'm going to use some thread lock on all of the bolts to make sure they don't come loose. And of course we need to refit the mounting bracket for the oil pickup feeds, and I'm also going to thread lock those bolts too. And there's a certain way of doing it. I think the first time that I did it, I didn't get them quite the right way around. Okay, so now it's on the right way, we need to torque it up, and I think it's 6 Nm for each one of the bolts. Now that's all sorted, we need to clean the old gasket material off the outside of the sump, ready to fit the new one. So to clean it off, I'm using a small Stanley knife to try and scrape away it, as well as wiping it down to get rid of the worst of it. Now that's all cleaned off, we're ready to fit the new gasket along with the sump. So I'm just going to go and grab that. Now we can put the new gasket on along with the sump and start to tighten all of the bolts up. And now they're all done, we need to put the oil sensor back in and tighten that back up. Now that's done, we need to put the 4 other bolts we took out from the gearbox and the back of the sump. With those back in place and tightened up, we can now reattach the wiring harness for the oil level sensor and the landers. So those electrical connections are out of the way, but what we also need to do is reattach the engine earth as well as fit in the new engine mounts. Now we're nearly ready to put the subframe back on, but first we need to reattach a fan belt and get that tensioner sorted out. Now to be fair, like I said earlier, I probably didn't remove this in the best way, and it's a bit of an awkward space and a bit tricky to get back on, especially when there's nothing to really hold the engine and you're trying to get that belt back on. Eventually though, after a bit of persuasion, I managed to get it back on. Now we just need to reattach power steering lines and then give the subframe a quick clean up, which didn't go as well as I thought it would, as I found something else which I needed to fix. So there was a lot of build up of corrosion and dirt on this subframe which I wanted to try and get off while it was still off the car. I tried to break the worst of it off with a screwdriver and a wire brush, but that still just wasn't cutting it, so I had to get the drill out and go it like that. And that's when I found out how badly corroded it was. Right, so look at how badly pitted this side is. After cleaning it all out, you can see how badly the water and the dirt sitting in there has just started to bite into the metal. So what I'm going to try and do to protect it for the long run Bit of primer inside of here, same on the other side's completely fine as you can tell, but this side we want to try and protect it while we can, otherwise over time, if it kept getting worse, what happened is water and dirt would just build up and build up, eat away here, you get a hole, and then it'd bend down and it would be a whole new subframe. So while we can sort it out, we can. And whereas it may not be everyone's idea on fixing it, I decided to clean it up and put some extra primer down to protect it and stop it from getting any worse. At the end of the day, it's function over form, and whilst we was waiting for that to dry, I thought it would be a good idea to give it a quick clean it with some brake cleaner to try and get some of that power steering fluid off. And I know you might be thinking right now that the grey primer looks really shoddy and it's a bit tatty. You're not wrong, it does look a bit tatty, but I've got the perfect solution for this. And just look at that for a colour match. And you could never even tell. So let's get the subframe back on and then we can start refitting the power steering lines and the power steering rack. Once I got a couple of bolts in loosely, I let it hang down on one side, so it gave me just enough room to put the top power steering line back on, as well as a heat shield for the steering rack. After I got those in place and tightened up, I put the other bolts in for the subframe and started slowly tightening them up one by one to pull the subframe up. At the same time as doing this as well, I had to try and wiggle the new engine mounts into the subframe and get the power steering lines all clamped down in the right spot. Now that I got those tightened up, I just needed to do the lower power steering line and actually had to take off this pipe to get it in the right spot because I got it a bit mixed up. To me it was a better idea to take this off than dropping the subframe down to do all of that again. Now that's all tightened up, I just need to put the plastic covers back on, give it one final clamp down, reattach the hubs, and then we'll move on to the throttle actuators. Right, so we're all done underneath now, everything's all done back up. Of course, we still need to top the oil up, but next what we're going to do is we're going to do the throttle actuators because I've heard these can be really problematic on these, and I figured while I've got the car in this state, we're going to rebuild them. So I've ordered myself a rebuild kit, and that's what we're going to do. While we're up as well, look at how much slack is in this now. So you see the shackle, before that was nice and tight, and that just proves how badly worn those engine mounts were, because the engine now is probably sitting at least 5 to 10 mil higher, which is going to do nothing but favours for the car. So let's get the crane off, or well, the brace off, and get those actuators out. So the throttle actuators are these two things down here, and what they do is they control these throttle bodies here, and these are individual throttle bodies, which means each cylinder's got its own throttle body. If the throttle actuators were to fail, you wouldn't be able to open and close these, which would put the car in a limp mode, or you might not be able to drive it at all. So what can usually happen is there's some little gears inside of there which are made out of plastic, which can break down and fail, putting it into a limp mode, or there might even be other electrical issues from what I've heard. But I've got no electrical fault code, so what I'm going to do is take them out, inspect those gears and fit them with new ones. And with this being such another common failure point for this engine, instead of waiting for them to go wrong and being stranded one day, we're going to get them done now. So to start getting these off, we need to undo some of the wiring connections at the top so that we can pull the wiring harness up and get this out of the way. There are also a couple of connections on the front which we also need to undo. They're a bit tricky to get to, but with a pick you can just about get to it. We pretty much just need to remove everything that's attached to this plastic wiring harness in the middle of the engine. We're undoing all of this so we have enough room to pull the actuators out once they're undone. Now that everything's unplugged, we need to undo the two 10mm bolts at the front as well as the back. Now I've got those, and then we can move the wiring loop out of the way and undo the linkage from the throttle bodies to the throttle actuator. Now we just need to undo the 3 T30s on each of them. Some of these had a bit of debris in them, so I gave them a bit of a clean up because I didn't want to run the risk of rounding them off. So in each one of these there's about 3 bolts, and they're kind of tricky to get to, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a magnet to fish these out. Okay, now I've got them both out. One thing I can tell you is if you look at the date on them, that's the date these were made and the date the car was made. So I don't think they've ever been changed. Whether they've been opened up before or anything's been done, not entirely sure. But we'll get the T20s off around the edge and we'll have a look. So we need to start by removing the covers on these so we can remove the gears and inspect them for any damage. So now that's off, you can see these teeth down here where it touches a white cog, they're starting to wear down and these have never been touched, and all of this white debris inside of here is just plastic that's starting to wear away. So what will happen is over time these teeth will wear down more and more and more, they'll get brittle and then they'll just break off and you lose all throttle. So it is a good job we're doing them because I don't think nothing's ever been done to these. Right, so I'm not an expert, it's the first time I've taken these actuators out, but what I'm looking at now is that motor there, it looks like all the plastic's down in here. So what I can assume is that when these electronically fail, maybe that motor gets a load of plastic in it and just clogs it up. That's what I can assume anyway. So I don't know, maybe you know a bit more than me, but let me know what you think. Maybe it's because that motor's blocked up, or maybe it's some short circuit on that board. I'm not entirely sure, but what I can tell is we do need to replace them. Right, so I've got them both apart now, and that second one is even worse than the first one, so well overdue. Anyway, let's get these rebuilt. Now that we've had a look at them, we know they're pretty close to failing, so we need to blow all the old debris out and then we're going to get started fitting the new gears. We need to get started by removing these old gears, and what we're using is a 3mm drill bit, and then we literally just have to snap them off. It almost seems counterintuitive, but I'll just follow the instructions and it's what you're meant to do. I got this rebuild kit from a company called Rebuild UK who literally just specialise in rebuilding these actuators. So after twisting it, not all of the gear came off, so I had to give it a little tap to get the rest of it off. Right, so now I've got to do as well is grind the edge of that lip off so we can put the new one on. Now we've done that, we need to put this back into the actuator along with the washer. And of course I need to do exactly the same with the other. And now they're both done, we can get started fitting new gears. So now we've got to mix both these together and then we can stick it down. So once we mix the epoxy, we need to put this inside the gear, press that onto the shaft and then give it one full turn and try and push it down. I couldn't actually get this on camera because it's really tricky to do, but once it's located we just need to tap it onto the shaft and make sure it's about a mil of play at the end. And then we just need to repeat this on the other side and then fit both the new gears over the top. Now that's all sorted, we just need to refit the covers and tighten the bolts back down. And with that all done, we've got ourselves a pair of rebuilt throttle actuators. Now we just need to put them back in and get everything else connected back up. Now that's all back together, I just need to make another couple of professional repairs. Now that's all done, I'm also going to put a bit of grease on the throttle bodies to stop them from sticking. To do this, I'm also using some dry PTFE because I feel like if I used anything else silicone based, all sorts of grit and dirt might get stuck in it. Right, so now all of it's done, the two biggest problems on this engine are out of the way. So that's rod bearings out of the way and the throttle actuator. So now of course we need to put everything else back together. So we're going to start by putting some new spark plugs back in this, then we'll move on to doing the fluids. And although this car's done 208,000 miles, I feel like it's going to be fresher now than it was at half the mileage. Right then, let's get the plugs in. So I'm putting a new set of NGK spark plugs in this. The ones that I took out were also NGK, but they've got different part numbers, and I found out that the ones I'm putting in now are actually superseded ones. So that means they've changed the design and they've tried to improve them. They should be a bit better for the car, and I don't think they have been changed as recently as I originally thought. Now that we've got all of those in, we can start to refit all the coil packs. And it'd be a shame to do all of this and not put some new spark plugs in it. And I've also heard these cars suffer with some injector issues, which is something that I might look into in the future. But for now, I think they should be okay. Anyway, now we just need to put the engine covers on, followed up by the scuttle tray. And I almost forgot, before I put the scuttle tray on, I need to put the strut brace back on. Okay, so now it's done, we need to sort the pollen filters out. Okay then, so to get these air filters out, what I think I've got to do is run a little pick along here to get them out, and unfortunately I forgot these on my shopping list, so what I'm going to have to do is just clean them out and reuse them. So a little pick along there, and it pretty much pops out. It's quite straightforward. Might have to get some more at another point, but for now all we're going to do is blow them out and we can put them back in. So I didn't actually think about these when I ordered everything, but I thought while I've got them off, we'll clean them out and try and get rid of the worst of it. Right, now they're all cleaned up, there's just one last finishing touch. And for an extra bit of finesse, of course, we have to give them a lick of that. Okay, so now we're ready to go back in. Now we just need to reattach the wiring harness and then we can put the pollen filters back in. Now that's all sorted, the last thing left to do is put the planning back on and put a bit of spray in these to try and make it easier to fit back down. Now the planning's back on, I need to reattach the vacuum lines and clamp it back down. And then last but not least, plug the map sensor in. There we go. Ah yes, and I've just remembered I've still got to put that weird little cap on, so I better unplug that, my bad. Yeah, it's pretty much where it's meant to be. So that's set out the way, plug the map sensor in, and that's it, onto the air filter. Right, so the purists are going to hate me for this, but I'm putting an aftermarket filter on it because really it's just an improvement, isn't it? And if you think about it as well, financially, from a different aspect, I always say this, say if you have a car for long enough, you've got a car for 20-30,000 miles, this is about £50, 2 air filters are about 25-30 quid. So by the time you've had it for 20,000 miles, it's already paid for itself. And it's just an improvement, isn't it? So you're probably wondering as well why I've got it down here on the ground to do it, because when I took this thing out, loads of dirt just tipped out of it. So it's got a load of stuff inside of it. It's just going to be way easier to clean it out while it's off the car instead of trying to do it on the car. So let's get it all apart and get the new air filter in. Right, so yeah, that's definitely well overdue a change, and it's absolutely filthy, that is. A load of dirt inside of it, and that's also why, like I say, I'm doing it off the car, so I can just tip all of this stuff out and give it a proper clean out and just do it the right way. Wonder where it's gone in this car for all that. Really do. That literally looks just like sand. Now I've cleaned the worst of it up, I'm going to give it a quick wash and then we'll get it fitted. Right, so now what we need to do is put the oil back in and top the steering fluid up, and then we can try and start it. So it takes about 9 litres of oil, and power steering fluid, I have not got a clue how much that takes, but we'll figure it out. We'll top it up bit by bit and then we'll bleed it through. I'll show you how to do that in a minute. So this car takes 10W60 and it took about 9.5 litres. And then some green CHF power steering fluid, and I think it took just over a litre. Right then, all done. Let's turn it over, fire it up and see what it's like. That'll be the power steering pump. All we've got to do is turn steering lock to lock a few times and top it up. So I'm going to go and top that up And yeah, it'll be alright when we chopped it up, don't worry. Power steering's all bled through. Check the oil level's okay. So far, everything's going sweet. Last thing I'm going to do now is we're going to service DCT gearbox on it, because when I rebuilt this thing and I got that cool off front of it, it didn't look great. If you want to see that, the link's just up there. So we're also going to need a scanner to do that, but first of all we need to start off by dropping the old oil out, then we can get the sump off it, change the filters in it, top it up, use this to detect the level in it, and then it's done. So now we need to remove the gearbox heat shields, and then I'm going to break off the fill cap before I undo the sump plug, just in case. Okay, that's all good. Let's drop the oil fluid out. Right, now I've let all the oil fluid out, we've got to take the sump off and a filter that's on the side of it, so I'll show you that. The other filter is just here, so we've got to undo this E10 or E12 bolt, get these pipes out of the way and get to that filter. I had a feeling this would be a bit of a pain. Oh, we got it. Oh, so close. Pray for me. I'm praying. Oh yeah, there we go. Oh my god. Oh dear god. Well, I guess that kind of helps put it in. So I've got a new circlip in it. Right, so that's all done now. It was a bit awkward trying to get in here. I didn't really want to damage it, of course, trying to tap it in. Bit of a tight space, but it's all in now. Circlip's fine, so I'm going to put these back in and then we'll drop this sump off. Right, now to the side filter. Now we need to undo the T30s and drop the sump off. And it was all going so well until I got this sump off and things took a turn for the worse. Right, so now I've got that pan off. I think, as far as I can tell, it's held on by two T30s, and I think that might just pull off, is what I'm hoping. Looks like it's got rubber O-ring on the side of it. So, oh yeah, just give it a wiggle. After removing this plastic picket pipe, it led me to find something else waiting to go wrong. I just noticed after taking this pipe off, there are a small amount of metal filings on the inside. It's quite brittle. I think I've just cracked it ever so slightly trying to pull it off. Despite having a really small hairline crack, it was still usable, but I decided that after I got this filter off that I needed to look a bit further into this. Right, so the little picket thing that I took off here, it's got a really small hairline crack in it, so I thought I'd have a look at one of them and see what it actually is, and I think this is meant to be the same part, and it's a sucking jet pump or something like that. So I'm going to take this off and have a look at it, because apparently this is another common point of failure on these. I've just looked up to try and find what it is, 'cause it's got a part number on it. Got like a get drag, which is a gearbox part number on it. So let's have a look. Maybe it's even been replaced before, I don't know, but that filter that I took out, that was original as well, so I don't know much about these, I ain't gonna lie. But after removing this and taking a further look at it, this revealed itself to be a problem waiting to happen. If I didn't break that pipe off, I would have never known what this is and left it alone. But it's meant to be like a ball, and I've been having a little play around with it, trying to move it around. And it looks like, you see that, I was saying there was a little metal violence on it. It looks like it's just started to fail. So I think what happens, that ball gets kind of trapped from going in and out, and then it, like that, and it gets stuck. Like, look, you see that? That's like the start of it starting to fail. So yeah, I mean, I guess sometimes things happen for a reason. because maybe if I'd have left that, it could have drastically got worse and it would have just chewed away it. Because from what I've seen online, what happens is the ball in here, it gets stuck and it just wears it completely away and it grinds down and then it creates like a leak inside of it. So something like that, if you see what I mean, there's like a gap in there and that doesn't allow the pressure in the gearbox to flow properly and can lead to different sorts of issues. So I'm going to try and find one of these hopefully tomorrow, and I don't think they're too much, I think they're about 60 or 70 pound, so not much. We'll try and find one of these, because running the risk of that with that ball starting to wear away like that, like I say, it ain't worth the hassle. Right then, so I've got my new suction pump, and that was 63.93, brand new from BMW, which I don't think is too bad at all. And all we need to do now, of course, is clean everything else back up and literally bolt that straight in. So, like I say, it's a good job these things happen, because I would have never known about that. So if you have a DCT car on the off shop, look into that, because it's the same on all the DCT boxes from what I've heard, and that could start to go. And I mean, if it's got a little scratch on it, it's only going to get worse. Right, so now that's sorted out, I'm going to clean this oil pan down before I put it back together. So I'm going to clean it down with some brake cleaner, as well as fitting a new gasket to it. So let's get this gearbox done, all back together, because I'm dying to get this car out. Now we need to put the new oil filter in and torque it up to spec. The rear bolt's 6 Nm and the front is 8 Nm. Why that is, I don't know. And of course, not forgetting to refit that new suction pump. Hand torquing that to 6 Nm. Now we're ready to refit the sump and torque it back up to spec. Now we need to top the gearbox up with new fluid, and I think it takes around 7 or 8 litres. And we need to do this in 2 different stages. So the first stage we need to top up without the car running and try and get as much fluid in as we can, and then we need to tighten it back up. Okay, so now we've done all of that, we need to run this car up and get the gearbox up to about 35 degrees. And to do that, we're going to need to use a scanner, so let's hop back up there into the car. Right, so what we need to do now is run the oil up to about 35 degrees, and we're going to use this to figure it out, to tell us what the oil temperature is. When it's about 35 degrees, we've got to undo that plug in while the car's running, top it off, rev it to about 2000, and do the final level. It'll make more sense if we're doing it. And this needs to be in quickly, because there's not much time between the right temperature and when it gets too hot.
We've done it, I think, just in time. Such a fine line of margin you've actually got from when it's 32 degrees to fill the rest of it up. But it did take probably about a litre extra. Should be a lot smoother now. Smooth like my brain. Tell you what though, this is a proper messy job, and I absolutely hate doing gearbox stuff. Right, so we're all done. Let's drop it down and take it out. Right, so giving the car a quick wash, and myself one too. So we're going to take this thing out, test it out and see what it's like. So we're going to go out to about 60 miles in it, bed the engine in and see what it's actually like. Already driving off the driveway as well, it feels a hell of a lot sharper. First up though, put some fuel in it and then we'll see what it's like. Right then, I'm going to do about 60 miles and I'll check back in with you if it's all okay, and probably more towards the end when we're driving it, opening it up and seeing what it's like. Right, so near enough done, 60 miles now, and this thing feels absolutely brilliant. Gearbox feels perfect, this feels perfect, absolutely perfection. A V8 and a BMW is honestly like a match made in heaven. I love this car. Like, after doing all that stuff to it, I feel a lot more confident driving it, instead of having things in the back of my head, rod bearings knocking, stuff like that, throttle actuators failing, gearbox issues. Anything can happen, don't get me wrong, but at least I've watched a lot of that stuff off and I've got peace of mind now. Right, so this thing is absolutely worlds apart. It shifts smoother, it drives better, the whole car sounds that smooth. It sounds like it's barely running, and that kind of brings me on to what we're going to be doing next time. So being a V8, I do want a bit more noise from it, so next time I'm going to be doing stuff with exhaust on it, because you don't have a V8 for no reason not to hear it. So next time, exhaust and a few other little bits along the way. Wheels as well. I'm not really a fan of diamond cut wheels, so I definitely want to do something about them, and I feel like it just looks like a standard M3 at the minute, and I want to add a few of my own touches to it and make it stand out a bit from the rest.
purists might hate me for it, that's fine, but I want to make it my own a bit, a few little touches to it, and of course slowly give it that bit of character that I want to. So make sure that you've tapped down below, hit subscribe, and of course you'll see all that stuff coming up. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in a bit.